This bizarre bubble-shaped airplane somehow became the surveillance aircraft everyone suddenly wanted. Built to replace helicopters, this strange bubble-shaped aircraft nearly vanished forever before governments suddenly wanted it back. Ever since the Wright brothers first lifted off the ground, humans became obsessed with one thing: flying slower. Sounds strange, right? Aviation was supposed to be about speed, faster engines, higher altitudes, bigger aircraft. But engineers quickly realized something unexpected. Sometimes the most useful aircraft wasn't the fastest one. Sometimes you needed something that could almost stand still in the sky. Wright brothers' first flight. And that's where helicopters changed everything. Suddenly, aircraft could hover over traffic jams, rescue people from mountains, and track targets from above. It felt revolutionary. But helicopters came with problems nobody could ignore. They were expensive, noisy, difficult to maintain, and honestly, terrifyingly unstable at low altitude. Flying one smoothly required serious skill, and operating costs kept climbing higher every year. So engineers started asking a dangerous question. What if there was another way? What if an airplane could do most helicopter jobs without all the complexity? Something quieter, simpler, cheaper. A machine that could fly painfully slow without falling out of the sky. And during the 1970s, one strange-looking aircraft started turning that impossible idea into reality: Edgley Optica. By the 1970s, both military agencies and civilian operators were running into the exact same problem. Helicopters were incredibly useful, but brutally expensive. Surveillance flights, border patrol, wildlife monitoring, pipeline inspections. These missions needed aircraft that could stay airborne for hours while flying low and slow. Helicopters could do it, sure, but every hour in the air burned money fast. And then there was the noise. Helicopters weren't subtle. You could hear them from miles away. That became a huge issue for surveillance work because the moment people heard rotor blades overhead, they reacted differently. Observation became harder. Pilots also struggled with vibration problems, making photography and sensor work less effective than people expected. But traditional airplanes had their own issue. They hated flying slowly. Push most aircraft too close to low speeds, and things got dangerous fast. Stalls, instability, loss of control. So engineers were trapped between two imperfect options. Helicopters were too costly, airplanes were too fast. And for a while, it genuinely looked like nobody could solve the gap between them, until one university student decided to try something completely different. His name was John Edgley, and honestly, most people probably thought he was insane at first. During the mid-1970s, while studying at Imperial College in London, Edgley became fascinated with air-to-ground observation aircraft. Not fighters, not passenger jets, slow-flying machines built specifically to watch the world below. But instead of improving existing airplanes, he went back to the drawing board completely. He believed the aircraft itself needed to change shape entirely. Visibility had to become the priority. Stability mattered more than speed. Silence mattered more than power. That mindset alone already separated his idea from almost everything else flying at the time. In 1974, he formed Edgley Aircraft Limited with a small team and began designing what would eventually become the Optica. And this next part is important. The weird appearance wasn't accidental. Every strange curve, every unusual angle, every bug-eyed feature existed for a reason. The aircraft was intentionally built to break traditional aviation design rules. And when people first saw it, they genuinely didn't know what they were looking at. Edgley Aircraft Limited. The first time people saw the Optica, reactions were all over the place. Some thought it looked futuristic, others thought it looked ridiculous, and honestly, both were probably true. The aircraft had this enormous bubble cockpit stuck onto the front like the head of a dragonfly. It didn't resemble a normal airplane at all. It looked more like something from a science fiction movie than a real aircraft. Edgley Optica. But that bizarre design solved a huge problem. Visibility. The cockpit gave pilots and passengers a massive 270-degree panoramic view around the aircraft, including almost straight downward visibility. Suddenly, observation crews could actually see what was happening below them without constantly banking the aircraft awkwardly, like traditional planes had to do. And then there was the cockpit itself. 3 people sitting side by side inside a giant glass bubble with panoramic visibility in almost every direction. No cramped military layout, no blocked windows. It felt open, almost helicopter-like. Behind the cockpit sat the Lycoming I-0540 engine, driving a large enclosed ducted fan, while twin tail booms stretched backward, supporting 2 rudders and a high-mounted tailplane. Some aviation fans even compared its strange silhouette to the OV-10 Bronco. But the Optica's weird appearance wasn't random. Every part of the aircraft had been engineered around one mission: flying low, slow, and stable for hours at a time. And slowly, people realized this bizarre aircraft might actually solve problems helicopters never fully could. The biggest surprise was the noise. Or rather, the lack of it. Instead of a conventional exposed propeller, the Optica used a 5-blade, ducted fan hidden behind the cockpit. That enclosed fan dramatically reduced the aggressive noise helicopters and normal aircraft created at low altitude. And for surveillance work, silence mattered enormously. Wildlife teams could observe animals without scaring them away. Police aircraft could monitor situations discreetly. Photographers loved the smooth, low-vibration ride during long flights. Even more impressive was the aircraft's low-speed handling. Most airplanes become unstable near stall speeds, but the Optica remained remarkably calm and forgiving. It could loiter over an area almost like it was floating instead of flying. That made it perfect for traffic monitoring, pipeline inspections, fire spotting, border patrol, and aerial photography. Helicopters were often too expensive, noisy, and maintenance-heavy for these missions. The Optica offered something aviation had been missing for decades: a quiet, stable, low-cost observation platform that genuinely looked capable of changing the surveillance industry forever. Inside, though, things felt completely different. The cockpit visibility was unbelievable. Pilots and observers sat side by side with huge windows surrounding them almost entirely. There was also space for specialized cameras, sensors, baggage, and observation equipment behind the seats and along the cabin floor. Everything about the aircraft focused on practical operational efficiency instead of flashy performance numbers. The Optica wasn't fast. And honestly, that was the entire point. Its maximum speed reached around 115 knots, but the real magic happened much slower. The aircraft could comfortably cruise around 70 knots while staying airborne for nearly 8 hours. That kind of endurance made surveillance crews very interested very quickly. Its stall speed sat around 58 knots, surprisingly low for a fixed-wing aircraft of its size. The Optica also carried a respectable range of roughly 570 nautical miles, with a service ceiling near 14,000 feet. None of these numbers sounded impressive compared to military aircraft or business jets. But this aircraft wasn't trying to outrun anything. It was trying to observe. Slow speed became an advantage because crews could monitor targets longer without circling aggressively or constantly repositioning. And suddenly, engineers realized the Optica had quietly created its own entirely different category of airplane. After years of development, the Optica finally took to the skies in December 1979. And for a moment, it felt like John Edgley had proven everyone wrong. The aircraft flew successfully, production slowly moved forward, and by 1984, the first production model was airborne. Then came another huge milestone. In February 1985, the aircraft officially received certification from the UK Civil Aviation Authority. That changed everything. Suddenly, the Optica wasn't just a strange prototype anymore. It was a certified operational aircraft ready for real customers. Excitement around the project started growing quickly. Police departments showed interest. Observation operators paid attention. Investors believed production could finally scale up. For the first time, it genuinely looked like this bizarre bubble plane might become aviation's next unexpected success story. And then, everything changed. In 1985, a police-operated Optica crashed during evaluation flights in Hampshire, killing both the pilot and photographer on board. Almost instantly, fear spread around the aircraft. Investors panicked, public confidence collapsed. And because the Optica already looked unusual, people immediately started blaming the design itself. But investigators discovered something important later. There was no structural failure, no major mechanical malfunction. The crash was ultimately linked to pilot handling during low-speed maneuvering, not some fatal flaw in the aircraft's engineering. Unfortunately, by then, the damage had already been done. And this next part hurt the most. John Edgley, the man who created the aircraft in the first place, was forced out of his own company shortly after the crash. Perception became more powerful than reality. Even though the aircraft itself wasn't fundamentally unsafe, the accident placed a permanent shadow over the program. For a second, it looked like the Optica's story was already over before it truly began. For a brief moment, the Optica actually started becoming famous. Its bizarre appearance made it impossible to ignore, and in 1989, the aircraft landed a role in the sci-fi movie Slipstream, starring Mark Hamill. Seeing this strange bubble-shaped machine flying across movie screens only added to its cult-like reputation. It looked futuristic without even trying. At the same time, aerial photographers were starting to fall in love with the aircraft. The visibility, smooth handling, and quiet operation made it one of the best observation platforms around. For a second, things finally seemed to be improving again. But then disaster hit. In 1987, an arson attack destroyed the Optica Industries factory. Nearly every completed aircraft inside was lost in the fire. Years of work vanished overnight. The company never truly recovered from the financial damage, and Optica Industries eventually collapsed completely. And just like that, one of aviation's strangest success stories was suddenly fighting for survival again. For years, the Optica looked like a forgotten aviation experiment. And then, 9/11 changed the entire surveillance industry overnight. Governments suddenly needed aircraft capable of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions almost everywhere. Border monitoring increased. Infrastructure protection expanded. Long-duration observation flights became far more important than before. At first, drones seemed like the obvious answer. But early unmanned systems were expensive, limited, and not always reliable. Helicopters still worked, of course, but operating costs remained painfully high. That's when people started looking back at the Optica again. Because suddenly its advantages felt modern instead of outdated. Quiet flight, long endurance, low operating costs, excellent visibility. It could patrol borders, monitor wildlife reserves, inspect infrastructure, and conduct surveillance missions without the huge expense of helicopters. And this time, government agencies and commercial operators were paying much closer attention to the weird bubble plane they once ignored. Even after the company collapsed, the Optica refused to disappear completely. Ownership of the aircraft program changed hands multiple times as different companies tried to figure out whether the concept still had a future. One of those owners was FLS Aerospace through Lovo Limited, which also controlled another project called the Sprint Trainer aircraft. There were plans to turn the Sprint into a military trainer for British forces, while also reviving the Optica program alongside it. But when the Sprint failed to secure military contracts, both projects stalled once again. For most aircraft, that would have been the end. But John Edgley still refused to quit. In 2007, he formed Aero Elvira with several former employees and managed to restore one surviving Optica back to flying condition. Then came a huge moment. On June 3, 2008, the aircraft officially returned to the skies. Later, the Optica appeared at major aviation events like the Farnborough and Paris air shows, while Interflight Global began evaluating a possible relaunch between 2016 and 2017. Somehow, this aircraft just kept surviving. And this is where the Optica starts feeling almost weirdly futuristic, because the aviation world today is dealing with many of the exact same problems it was designed to solve decades ago. Helicopters are still expensive. Surveillance demand keeps growing. Environmental monitoring is becoming more important every year. And drones, despite all the hype, still have major limitations involving endurance, regulations, and payload capacity. The Optica suddenly fits right into that gap again. Quiet observation flights, border patrol, wildlife tracking, coastal monitoring, tourism flights, aerial photography. The aircraft can perform these jobs efficiently without the massive costs tied to helicopter operations. And honestly, its panoramic cockpit probably feels even more attractive now, in an era obsessed with immersive experiences. What's fascinating is how modern the concept suddenly feels. Some aviation enthusiasts even believe the Optica could work perfectly with hybrid or electric propulsion systems in the future. Lower noise, lower fuel burn, longer endurance. Decades later, this strange bubble plane no longer feels outdated. It feels like something that arrived too early.
General reconnaissance use. So again, I've done a very bad job at describing it as it pulls in across the display line here from left to right. Very high-pitched, relatively quiet engine noise.
The Optica's story was never just about one aircraft. It became a story about timing, persistence, and refusing to abandon unusual ideas. The aviation industry changes fast, and innovative concepts often disappear before the world understands them. But John Edgley kept believing in the aircraft even when almost everyone else gave up. And maybe that's why aviation fans still love the Optica today. It represents something rare, an aircraft brave enough to look strange in order to solve real problems differently. The Optica may have looked strange, but decades later, its ideas suddenly make more sense than ever. In a world obsessed with efficient surveillance, quiet flight, and low operating costs, this forgotten bubble plane might finally get the second chance it always deserved. Sometimes the weirdest aircraft are the ones that predict the future.